Welcome everyone. So today's video is another part of my concert series. Basically, if you're new to the channel, this is a series where I get ready for concerts that I wish I could have attended. All of these concerts are pretty important in like rock history. They feature some of the greatest artists of the 60s and 70s, but mainly they are concerts I would have loved to go to. So let me take you along to the festival that was completely new and different to anything anyone had ever seen or heard of before. Let me tell you about the time pretty much the entire West Coast gathered in a small city to listen to some of the most amazing rock artists of the time and to celebrate the hippie movement. Let me take you with me to the festival that started a cultural revolution. Let me invite you to the Monterey Pop Festival. So to really understand the Monterey Pop Festival and why it was such a new and inspiring and interesting thing, you kind of have to take a look at the 60s culture and counterculture in general. I'm just quickly gonna touch on this topic now, but if you're interested in knowing everything about the 60s and the counterculture, I already made a video all about that and I'm gonna link it here for you so you can check that out. So basically in 1967, the Vietnam War was close to its climax, and the hippie movement really came from a place of political confusion, frustration, desperation, and fantasizing about a new way of living. And that fact and the desperation for peace really played a huge part in the Monterey Pop Festival. So the makeup look that I'm going to create today is kind of inspired by that picture that I saw of the Monterey Pop Festival and a girl attending it. I really like it. Face paint was a big trend in the mid and late 60s, and all I've done so far was to kind of put some skin tint onto my face to just cover up some blemishes, and now I'm gonna get started with the actual face painting. So I kind of really want to add like a flower shape on my eyelid and then do something different down here. So we're gonna start by doing that, and to kind of match the outfit and everything, I'm gonna start by using white. I'm using this palette of face paint. I'm just gonna take the white and I'm gonna draw it onto my eye. But I feel like generally speaking, you can do whatever you want. Face paint was all about being creative and expressing yourself. So I'm just gonna line it out. So now that I have the shape, I'm just gonna color it in with the white all the way. So Lou Adler, who was the manager of the Mamas and the Papas, alongside Mamas and the Papas frontman John Phillips, had the idea to create an event that was full of rock music. They had the unifying vision to gather all of rock's emerging artists and showcase them in one big festival. So in 1967 there had already been jazz festivals and folk festivals, but there had never been a rock festival. So John Phillips and Lou Adler chose Monterey, a place about 100 miles off San Francisco, for their festival. So in the mid to late 60s, San Francisco really was the place to be for all the hippies. Especially Haight-Ashbury, which is a district of San Francisco, was filled with hippies. And music was a really important tool for them to get heard. So for them, music really was so liberating because it was the fuel for the idealism. So now that I've filled in this eye, I'm just gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. So in 1967, the bands living in San Francisco, such as Big Brother and the Holding Company and Jefferson Airplane, really thought of the bands living in LA, like the Mamas and the Papas, of big sellouts. So when Lou Adler presented his idea, they weren't really on board at first. Only when Lou Adler said that all the proceeds would be donated and all the bands would play for free, they decided to do it. And so in just a couple of weeks, an impressive set list came together, with Simon and Garfunkel, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, Jefferson Airplane, Big Brother and the Holding Company, and a lot more amazing and talented artists. So before I add more color to this, I'm gonna use white as well and just kind of draw some strikes down from my eyes. I feel like the other looks were easier to talk while doing them, and this time I kind of have to part it because when I talk my face obviously moves, but I will tell you more about the festival in a sec. So really never had so many rock bands played together in one place at one time. And leading up to the event, people got so excited for it that they really thought they would miss out if they weren't attending Monterey Pop. So the Monterey Pop Festival was actually joined by a film crew, and these weren't really experienced top-notch filmographers, and they didn't really had any idea what they were doing. They were kind of overwhelmed with the whole situation and they wanted to broadcast it, but in the end the footage that they got, because they were so in the moment, kind of was too good and too strange for television, so they ended up making a film out of it. I'm gonna use some gold now and draw little stars underneath the lines that I just made. So leading up to the event, people had no idea how many people would attend it, and the police was kind of afraid that the whole situation could get out of hand. So back in 1967, hippies had a big reputation for smoking pot and doing acid. And at the Monterey Pop Festival, they really lived up to that expectation. So because the Monterey Pop Festival was something completely new, no one really knew what to expect. And people who were there described it as a door to a new kind of wonderland world filled with music and love and peace and colors. So when planning the festival, the Beatles were actually part of the board, but 67 was after the years that Beatles really did a lot of live performances, and so they weren't coming and performing. There are also rumors that the Rolling Stones were asked to be there, but they didn't end up going, and I don't really know if that rumor is true, because I didn't really find any documents or anything to prove that. However, Brian Jones attended the festival alongside Nico, the singer of the Velvet Underground, and my outfit is actually highly inspired by what Brian Jones wore. He also wore kind of a vest like this and a necklace like this, and I feel like this is just perfect for that psychedelic festival look. So obviously we're talking about a 3-day festival, and so I can't really touch on every single person that performed and every band that was there, but I'm just gonna tell you a bit about the highlights. I also really want to add some more color to this makeup, and because the dress has a lot of blue and purple, I'm gonna use those colors and add some more detailing to the flowers on my eyes. So among the bands performing were Simon and Garfunkel, Canned Heat, Country Joe and the Fish, Jefferson Airplane was also performing, and back in 1967, Jefferson Airplanes, they were really the stars of the scene. They were pretty much the most famous band performing, especially among the audience being mainly from San Francisco. And in that year, Jefferson Airplane had released their songs White Rabbit and Somebody to Love, which were both huge hits. Otis Redding was also performing, and so were The Who. And The Who were kind of pretty new to the scene. They were from Great Britain, they didn't really fit in with the psychedelic San Francisco crowd. However, their hit My Generation really blew everyone away. So Pete Townsend actually recalls the festival, and he said that they were super nervous to go on stage because they kind of felt like they didn't really belong. And also they had this kind of bickering fight with Jimi Hendrix because they didn't want to go on stage after him because they were really intimidated by his guitar playing. But then Jimi Hendrix was also kind of intimidated by them. And usually with these festivals, the better the act is that you're playing afterwards, the harder it is for you to blow away the audience. And so in the end, The Who kind of won and they played first, and at the end of the performance they started destroying all of their instruments like they did in every performance. But because they were so new to the San Francisco scene, people were so confused by what was going on. Some of the security people even said that they thought like a fight was starting or something, because no one really had ever seen people destroying their instruments at the end of the act. But The Who is really known for their like theatrical kind of approach of rock music, and so they were all about making that big impressive entrance. So I'm gonna use some yellow now and just add a yellow eyeliner. And with the yellow eyeliner, I'm kind of taking it out and going all the way across the shape that I draw and kind of like add a frame to that. So after The Who, Jimi Hendrix went on stage, and Jimi Hendrix had performed pretty much every single night backstage. So it wasn't really a performance, but he kind of went backstage and started jamming with all the other artists. And Jimi Hendrix was pretty much new to the crowd, and they didn't really know him. All the other artists didn't really have any idea who he was, but he was so good that he pretty much intimidated everyone being there. And so when he went on stage and did this really sexual, amazing performance, people went absolutely crazy. His performance really made the whole audience super ecstatic, and when he burned his guitar at the end of the performance, people went out of their minds. Also performing at the Monterey Pop Festival were Big Brother and the Holding Company. They were also pretty new, especially with singer Janis Joplin. It hadn't been that long that she had actually joined the group, and when she went on stage, people didn't really know what to expect. But she started singing and she absolutely blew everyone away. Her mesmerizing way of singing and performing was so hypnotizing that people really couldn't take their eyes off of her. So closing the festival were the Mamas and the Papas, and they kind of went in there as the kings and queens of the music business. They were really doing so well at the time. They were one of the absolutely most successful bands at the time, and when they went on stage, their performance was okay, but it wasn't really as amazing and as ecstatic and explosive as Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, or The Who were. So you can kind of see that at this festival, the throne kind of changed from the Mamas and the Papas kind of going down, and then bands like Big Brother and The Holding Company, Jimi Hendrix, and The Who really rising. Something that I also think is really important to note is the bond that was kind of created between the anti-establishment, like the hippies, and the establishment, like the police officers that were there. Because at one point the police officer even decorated their helmets and hats with flowers, and the whole festival was extremely peaceful. There was no conflict with any police officers or anyone. So another big thing at the Monterey Pop Festival, as said before, was acid. And they were actually calling it Monterey Purple and handing it out like candy. So Tom and Lisa Law came up with the idea of a safe tent, a kind of drug bad trip tent. If you want to know a bit more about Lisa Law, check out that counterculture video because I talk about her in that video as well. But basically they set up a teepee for people that were having a bad trip. It's said that Jimi Hendrix spent a couple of hours in there, and basically everyone who wasn't feeling good could go in there and would just get comforted. However, the whole festival noted no arrest, death, or overdoses, which basically means it was one of the most peaceful festivals ever happening. It was also a huge opportunity for new artists like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, who weren't signed before the festival and went home with big record deals. So from the Monterey Pop Festival, the whole summer of love really emerged. People traveled to San Francisco to be part of that movement of peace and love, and the song San Francisco really became a huge hit in the summer. So even though the Monterey Pop Festival was so amazing and exciting, and it was something that never really happened again, because even at Woodstock it wasn't really as pure and as mesmerizing anymore, I kind of quickly want to talk about the downside of the Monterey Pop Festival, because there is a big sad side to this story. So a lot of the bands performing at the Monterey Pop Festival actually didn't really last that long. A lot of people think the Monterey Pop was such an outstanding festival because the only drugs that were really taking at that weekend were weed and acid. Pretty much after that, heroin became a big thing, and people like Janis Joplin overdosed super young off of that. And I feel like it is really important to note that Monterey Pop was kind of that pure hippie movement, and then the years after got so dark, with people like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix dying really young. And also only 2 years younger, the hippie movement was grossly misused by people like Charles Manson to slaughter and kill a lot of people. And I feel like that is why the Monterey Pop Festival is so outstanding, because it was filled with peace and love, and it was really the height of the hippie movement, because the hippie movement kind of took a dark and not so good turn. It almost seemed like the Monterey Pop Festival had created this magical wonderland moment that was never recreated again. And honestly, above seeing all of these artists perform and all the great music and everything, this is the main reason why I would have loved to attend the Monterey Pop Festival. It was really that moment of peace and love, that kind of wonderland moment that was created and that was so fragile and beautiful that it didn't really last. So for us getting ready for the festival right now, I am done with the look, and at this point we would probably be extremely excited to see all of our favorite artists and new musicians perform. However, we would have no idea that this moment would be created only one time and that we would be about to witness it. So I'm gonna put in some footage now of me showing you the makeup and a close-up and also the full look so you can properly see everything that I did. So yeah, I feel like the best way to describe the Monterey Pop Festival was to say that it was a weekend that was kind of a parallel wonderland. And it was so fragile that it didn't last, but that is why we should really look back at the time and think about why was that possible back then and why wasn't it possible any time again after. Because I feel like if we would all put our minds to create a moment like that again, it would definitely be possible. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and maybe even share it with a friend. It supports me, it supports the channel, and it would mean a lot. If you're interested in all things 60s and 70s, subscribe to this channel because I upload multiple videos every single week all about that, and I would love to have you around. I hope you're having an amazing day. Go out, enjoy the sunshine, take yourself some time to focus on you and your mental health today, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys!